Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. I'm going to be doing a series on baking with puff pastry. So I thought we should start with learning to make puff pastry. I'm going to show you two ways, the easy way, and later we'll do the classic puff pastry. Here are your ingredients. Please pause and write them down. And hey, while you're paused, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you click the little bell at the top, you'll get notice when I post videos of all the yummy things I'm going to make with this puff pastry. Now let's get cooking. I have a teaspoon of diastatic malt barley powder, 1.5 teaspoons salt, and half teaspoonful lemon juice. I'm going to use my mixer for this. You can do it by hand. I have here 2 1/3 cups flour. I'm going to add the salt and the diastatic malt powder. That's optional. You don't have to use it. Bakers use it, and it gives you a little bit better browning capabilities. And I'm just going to mix these together real quickly. Just fluff them up a bit. Now the half teaspoonful lemon juice you saw is just for color, because you can make this ahead. If you put a little lemon juice in it, it retains its color better. So I have here 2 sticks, 1 cup of butter that I cut up into chunks and I put in the freezer. And I'm going to just dump this in here a little bit at a time. Say I've cut it up into, I don't know what, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch pieces. We're going to mix it in here until it becomes marble size. Now this is a difference in the classic puff pastry and the easy method. We're adding the butter right in here. We're not going to actually laminate the dough. And this works very well, especially if you use a lot of puff pastry, do a lot of baking, because this cuts quite a bit of time off your whole process. And then it's also a little easier to handle. If you're new to making puff pastry, you may want to try this way first, just because neither method is hard. They take a lot of time. This takes a little bit less time. And I think maybe the idea of making puff pastry intimidates some folks. So if you start with this, it's less intimidating, even though really you shouldn't be intimidated by making this. It's not that hard. And you can do it. It just takes a little practice. So I've just beat this around a little bit. And you can do this in a food processor. And I'll just show you the texture we're going for here. We don't want all the butter totally mixed in, but we want it down small to about marble size and spread throughout the flour mixture. So now that we've done all that, we're going to add our liquid ingredients. And my little 4-year-old constant companion is going to do that. So she's putting in the little bit of lemon juice. And then we'll add the water a little bit at a time. And the lemon juice, I'll mention again. Well, yeah, she wants to adjust. I'll mention again, this keeps for several days in the fridge, several months in the freezer. And as it gets older, it can take on a kind of a gray tint. And the lemon juice prevents that. So we're going to mix, adding the liquid about 2 ounces at a time, a little bit at a time. Yes, we're learning how to lift the bowl here, and we got that. Now I do this on a slow speed too. Doesn't take a lot of mixing because we don't want to break up all the butter. So we're going to add the water. I'm showing her. There you go. About 2 ounces of water there. And we're going to watch it. What we want is for the dough to all pull together and to start to form a ball. And it might take a little bit less water. It might take just a few drops more. I have a cup measured out, and what I did was put an ice cube in it and set it in the fridge. So just long enough for the ice cube to melt. We've got really cold water, and cold water is important. So it's starting. We'll add just a little bit more. I want it just a little bit more together. And we'll watch for it. I'm doing this in real time. You can see it doesn't take long. And there you go. It's all together. You see it? I'll show you the texture. It's kind of shaggy, kind of rough, not too wet, just enough that it'll form a ball. I'm going to turn this out on my floured board. Be right back. Now I have a good bit of flour here on the board. All I'm going to do is form this into a ball, and then I'm going to refrigerate it. And after it's refrigerated, we'll do some folding. And I'm not going to show you every bit of this because there's a lot of repetition. You just do the same thing over and over. But I will show it to you a couple times. And just work this until it's pretty smooth. And then we're going to let it rest in the fridge. Make a ball. I'm going to wrap it in plastic. And 30 minutes to an hour in the fridge, just enough to make sure that that butter stays cold. Now this is what's a lot easier, takes a lot less time than the classic puff. And I have one piece of plastic wrap here, and I'm going to use the same one through the whole process. Now I keep a little pad, a little notepad, and make a note of when it goes in the fridge. And you can write it right on the plastic if you want to, but this is going in the fridge. And we're going to make 5 what they call turns. And I'm sorry I didn't show you the first turn. I thought I had my camera on and I didn't. So I'm going to show you the second turn, and all the turns are identical, so it doesn't matter. And this is what I mean by a turn. I have folded this in a letter fold. I rolled it out and put it in a letter fold. And I put the folded part to the left, since I'm folding what will look to you like left to right. But when you're doing it yourself, you'll probably be doing it up and down with the fold to your left. I'm going left to right just for camera purposes. So if you'll see, I start folding it very gently. I never do a hard push, and I don't do this really fast because I want to spread the butter as I'm going. And the butter's cold, and I put enough flour on here so that it doesn't stick. And I'm just going to fold it out to a rectangular shape, approximately 3 times as long as it is wide. When I think I end up here with 6 by 18, you can go 7 by 21. And it doesn't have to be exact. It needs to be very close. And you want to work as you do this to keep the rectangular shape. So I don't move side to side at all unless I need to adjust the shape just a little bit. It's 99% all in one direction. So when you get it to be about 6 inches wide, as you're folding long ways, it might get just a little bit bigger. So we'll measure as we go along. You want to pay particular attention to the ends. You don't want to roll your rolling pin off the ends. Roll right up to the ends, and then place your rolling pin on the thick part and move in the other direction. That's just because you don't want the butter to squirt out. And it might, if you're not a little careful. So I'm going to try to get it about 6 to 7 inches wide and about 18 to 21 inches long. And this is a 6-inch measurer, so you see we've got about 19 and a half inches there. So I'm going to go just a little bit, do a little bit more rolling just to get rid of any thick spots. See, this is what I'm talking about with the ends. You don't roll off the end. If you have a thick spot on the end, you put your rolling pin right down on it and then roll away from it. So we're about 6.5 inches here. That's pretty close. Now I'm going to square it up. You just do this with your hands. You can do this with your dough scraper, whatever you're using. And square up the sides. We want to try to get it as close to a rectangle without any big spots sticking out as we can. So now I'm going to make a letter fold. And I'll measure out, well, you can't see the end there, but we're about 6 by 18 at this point. And I'll lay that there as a guide. So I want to fold it about 6 inches up. And we want this to fit snug at this other fold. And that doesn't. So I'm going to move it just a little bit. And that's just to help keep the evenness in the thickness as you go. There you go. Now I'm going to shape this up with my hands. I should have approximately 7 inches by approximately 7 inches here. You know, when you buy this in the refrigerator, it's in little measured pieces like this. And I'm going to wrap this back up, and I will write on my little pad the time and that this is the second turn. Just fold it over, refrigerate it for at least 30 minutes or overnight. You know, if you want to do half the process today and half tomorrow, you can. So this is a completed second turn. Now I'm getting ready to do the third turn, and I just want to show you this. I have a dry cloth here, and between each turn I make sure all the crumbs, the little buildup that you can get from working with dough and flour, are cleaned off, because if you have any little hard bits, they're going to work themselves into your pastry. Okay, so this is the third turn, and I turn it with the folded part to my left. Kind of place it out in the middle of the cutting board, a little flour on my hands. And this is the only other turn I'm going to show you. So we've got a 6 by, it's a little over 6 the other direction, but that's fine. So once again, beat it out just a little bit to get it started. Each time you do a turn, the dough gets easier to work. Still don't get in a hurry. I just roll it as evenly as I can. Make sure the end is kind of sealed there. And when you use this dough, by the way, you're going to trim the edges. So if you're sealing the edges as you work here, it's okay, because we'll cut that away to allow the pastry dough to fluff up as you go. And just roll it slowly in order to spread that butter. And while I'm doing this, because you don't need me to narrate it again, let's just talk about all the different things you can do with the puff pastry. You can buy a package of puff pastry. I actually never have, but I understand it comes in a 1 pound package. What you're going to have here is 1.5 pounds of puff pastry dough. And when you use it, recipes generally call for either a pound or a half pound. And so we can cut this when we get ready to use it into 2 half-pound sections. And you can use, say if you wanted to make turnovers, and these make lovely turnovers. I'll do that for you and show you a video on how to do that. Usually takes about a half pound for 6. If you want to make pie crust with this, it takes a half pound for the top and a half pound for the bottom. And so as we think of things we want to make with puff pastry, we're going to have this either in the fridge or the freezer. You can make 2 recipes of this if you're going to be doing some big baking for a holiday or something and you want to use puff pastries. Oh yeah, and this makes perfect Danish, or a Napoleon, or a strawberry tart, or a raspberry tart. So many things. So once you master making this, apple galette, whatever it is, whatever little fancy puffy dessert that you want to try, or that you've been making with grocery store puff pastry, you can use this. You can use the classic also, which I will show you in a later video. But just if you put just a little time into learning how to do this, then you have just hundreds of different things that you can make that are, once the pastry's made, are so easy and will impress your guests and make your family feel like you think they're special. So here we go. I'm evening this up now. I'm going to fold it. This is our third turn of 5. Brush off any extra flour. If you have a little brush, you can do that. I just didn't get my brush out. Square it off. And I need to make my fold a little bit further along, because you do want to make that a tight fit right there. And I'll wrap this back up in my plastic, put it back in the fridge for 30 minutes to an hour. I'll write on my little pad, third turn, and set the time. I will be back here to you after I've done the 5th turn. We're going to do it for a total of 5. Some people go 4. I don't think that's enough. Some people go 7 or 8, and I don't think that's necessary with this. With classic it is, but with this, 5 turns is going to give you a good product. So I'm back. I'm finishing up the 5th turn. And when I'm done with this, I'll show you how I store it. You could make a couple of these, put them in your freezer. If you get ready to use them then, or when you get ready to use them then, you'll let them thaw just enough to cut. So I have it, and it's a little bit smaller than 6 inches that way. That's okay, because we'll cut off a piece and roll it for, let's see, the next thing I'm going to make is I'll make a breakfast pie, which will take 2/3, and then I'll make peach turnovers, which will take 1/3, and then this will be gone. 3 or 4 days in the fridge, 3 months in the freezer. So we want to wrap it really well, and I'll stick this down into a gallon-size plastic bag and then push as much air out of it as I can. Now this is all of this video. We're just showing you how to make the easy puff pastry. When I make the other videos, I'll link them in the info section. And let me just really encourage you to try this. There's just nothing quite like puff pastry, and it's really not difficult to make, especially if you're doing the easy puff pastry. Thank you for joining us. I hope you try this. I hope you like it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow for 7-layer breakfast pie with puff pastry.